what's particularly interesting is that this operation was run by, it was set up by a convicted felon by the name of Admiral Poindexter. Remember Iran-Contra? And of course, you know, lest we think that 9/11 was a complete surprise to our federal government, it was during the Iran-Contra hearings that Oliver North talked about a really bad fellow that he was really afraid of, and he needed a $70,000 security system to protect his family from a fellow by the name of Osama bin Laden. But for those of you who have a hard time pronouncing or spelling his name, you can refer to him by his CIA name, his cover name, Tim Osman. He was a listed CIA asset right up until about July of 2001, which was sometime after we'd already sent special forces in Afghanistan. So I, for one, don't really believe that the federal government's been very forthcoming to us with facts, you know, about things related to terrorism. Mr. Bush says, you know, we should just trust him. I don't know about you, but I don't trust him, not when all this is going on. So, we're being spied on, but that's not enough to have these internal surveillance mechanisms. Number 5, fifth step, infiltrate and harass citizens groups. Now, as I mentioned, back in the 60s, you know, there were some legitimate criminal enterprises out there that were threatening people's lives, safety, undermining our liberty, you know, with their activities. But this carried beyond these groups. The federal government, federal law enforcement agencies, FBI in particular, engaged in a counterintelligence program to spy on anyone that they considered worthy of surveillance. So any-war groups typically fell under this category. And yeah, I know, a bunch of hippies, long-haired, you know, pot-smoking hippies, but you know, if they weren't committing a crime, if they weren't advocating criminal activity, why were we spending so much time with these COINTELPRO activities, you know, to disrupt these groups? And that's the very thing in number 5, and we're seeing this today. But since 9/11, this has increased tremendously. And it's one of the reasons why, for the first few years after 9/11, there seemed to be a real resounding silence in the pro-liberty community about how far we're going. But finally, people are realizing that they just have to shake off their fear. There is no, you know, there's nothing to fear but fear itself, as they say. Okay, I mentioned the Quaker churches. Now, according to the FBI, you know, we have to spy on Quakers because they have meetings in their places of worship that are considered subversive. There is sedition going on. And never mind the First Amendment. You know, we got to spy on them because those pacifists are dangerous if you don't know what they're going to do. Seventh-day Adventists. Now, a lot of people confuse them with Branch Davidians. It's like apples and oranges. But, you know, they're a lot like, you know, the Quakers. You know, they don't, you know, aspire to violence. But they're dangerous, too. We got to keep an eye on them. The Constitution Party. The Libertarian Party. Ron Paul delegates at the Republican Convention. These people have to be silenced. We can't allow them to infect the population with their ideas. If you're pro-life or anti-death penalty, you are being spied on and your activities are being infiltrated by federal agents. And not just federal agents, too. I mentioned this joint task force thing. That's where they bring in state and local police forces to assist. Because the number of federal agents are actually not quite as large as what you have at the local level. And that gives them a much better manpower base to draw from. And when they can bring on city police, county sheriffs, state troopers, that gives them a lot more boots on the ground. And then they can dress up in civilian clothes like we are right now, just wearing, whatever you feel like wearing, nice and comfortable. And you have no idea that the guy sitting next to you is here to monitor what is happening and to report back to his superiors. Number 6, engage in arbitrary detention and release. Now, a lot of people think about Guantanamo Bay. Oh yeah, we got these guys that we captured in the Middle East, and they're dangerous. And we were told that a lot of them were known affiliates of terrorists, but that's not true. The truth of the matter is the vast majority of them have already been released because there's not one scintilla of evidence proving that they had any connection. Even the fellow that was purported to be bin Laden's chauffeur, he was just a taxi cab driver. So, if you happen to be a taxi cab driver, you better do a background check on the guy that you are about to pick up before you let him inside the cab. Arbitrary detention, however, is not merely Guantanamo. Again, we have a little program called Extraordinary Rendition, which presumably is only engaged in overseas. Khalid al-Masri, Palestinian by not nationality, but ethnicity, but in fact a German citizen, was kidnapped, taken to an undisclosed location, and tortured repeatedly for years. And then finally, they couldn't get anything out of him, torture being historically an unacceptable and unusual method for gaining reliable intel. They released him, but not back in Germany. They just dumped him on the side of the road in the Middle East. Have a nice day. And there have been others. But, you could be kidnapped if you're a dissident and taken to a foreign country where torture is okay. Or for that matter, any other undisclosed location. There's no safe place. This is very disturbing, but the thing is that there's more. I wish it would stop there, but there's more. Recently, and a lot of people miss this because it was about the same time that the economic crisis was beginning to percolate. He had arrests at of protesters at the Democratic and Republican National Conventions. At the Democratic Convention, journalists were preventively detained so that they could not report on events going on there. This included producers, an ABC producer, and you can check this out. I'm pretty sure they still have it archived. I hope they do. An ABC producer was preventively detained. Their equipment was destroyed. The recordings that they had were erased because they were attempting to investigate corruption. This was supposed to be a party's convention, but these were federal agents working in conjunction, again, with these task forces. At the Republican National Conventions, you didn't have just preventive detention, you had mass arrests. And I'm not talking protesters. Okay, that happened to be Labor Day weekend when they had the convention in Minnesota. And there were 400 union members of the Service Employees International Union having a Labor Day picnic. They were unarmed. They were assembled peacefully. They weren't even there for the convention, but they were all rounded up and taken to a detention holding area.